But you stand by that claim about him?
I don't stand by anything. 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 I don't stand by anything.
Hi, I'm Peter Rickards from Twin Falls, Idaho. Beautiful southern Idaho is brought to life by the water that starts up by our nuclear facility. The Big Lost River dives right into the desert and brings southern Idaho to life. Unfortunately, there's a plutonium dump, acres and acres of dumped plutonium particles that have been there forever. They promised to clean them up, and unfortunately they faked the cleanup. Only 10%'s gone. 90% of the plutonium is staying in the flood zone. We can still clean this up, but they want to pretend it's clean and cluster 10 or more nuclear power plants here in Idaho. That's crazy. Cyber attacks, disgruntled employees, those can all melt down those power plants and not only evacuate southern Idaho, but affect the states downwind, Utah, all the way to the East Coast. We can still save Idaho. I need you to wake up.
A businessman don't have to give a damn about how he makes a dollar. Poison air, poison land, now let me hear you holler. Is it too late to save the beauty in our nation? No, 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 Idaho, oh no. We've got children that wanna grow. We need more plutonium, like a hole in the head. Tell the political prostitutes that SIS is dead, dead on arrival. Oh, dead on arrival. We're fighting for survival. So when they ask you to bend over and say this won't hurt a bit, our condom covers SIS with the perfect fit. You're safe, so don't worry. Our dirty deeds will soon be through. And when the radiation leaks, you'll know that you've been truly screwed. Dead on arrival. Oh, dead on arrival. We're fighting for survival. Causing cancer with the mess they've made. But don't talk about it now, that's the way the game is played. They're taking care of business all the way to your grave. Dead on arrival, oh, dead on arrival. We're fighting for survival.
I'm a retired podiatrist from Twin Falls. I've been a citizen activist since 1988 when we were actually told INL was clean. Now we know there's a ton of dumped plutonium up there that is still there. And cleaning up that plutonium would be $15 billion worth of jobs for Idaho. And instead they insist on bringing in nuclear fuel rods. And the problem with nuclear power is cyber terrorism can melt it down, and it can be done from inside and outside the plant. And according to the official documents of the United States government, the renewable energy labs, we can actually outproduce our electric needs almost 3 times with geothermal power, almost 3 times more than we need with wind power, and that same amount with solar power. So the big question is, why risk the evacuation of Idaho when we have safer alternatives? All of these energy forms can be hacked by computers, but only nuclear power can force the evacuation of Idaho. And I sat on the Citizens Advisory Panel for the Centers for Disease Control. The official map is on my website, PeterForIdaho.com, and you can see the plume from the original meltdowns from a lover's triangle in 1961, came in an inversion layer down to Pocatello, down to Burley, and down to Twin Falls for a solid week. And this would force the evacuation of Idaho if it was done with full-scale reactors. And they plan on putting multiple full-scale private commercial nuclear reactors that they cannot put in Seattle, but they're going to put 10 of them here in Idaho and sell the power to Seattle. We are not going to be on frontline duty if I can help it. So I've been fighting this since 1988. They faked the cleanup. I can show you with documents. I have a $1,000 reward for any scientist or citizen or politician who can find any lie from me in 30 years of my correcting the DEQ and correcting the INL claims of safety. Nuclear power remains the most dangerous way to boil water. That is all they're doing, is boiling water to turn the turbine, just like the wind turbines turn, and just like a coal-fired plant, which we need to get and move away from because of all the effects of the mercury in the fish. But they're simply turning turbines, and we don't need to do that, but our politicians like Mike Simpson are positively at their donors' wishes, and Idaho is too great to evacuate.
I know you kind of touched on that with this, but in case there's anything else you want to add, What is your platform or the issues you are campaigning for?
Oh, I absolutely have a platform detailed at PeterForIdaho.com with almost every issue. I have more detail per square inch than any politician. A successful politician never gives details because as soon as I say I'm against nuclear power, the people who are misinformed to believe that's the only safe alternative will move against me. But I literally detail those. So I want health care for all. Obamacare mandated we buy insurance, and health insurance, the CEOs of like Blue Cross and these people never help a patient, never touch a patient, and they literally boss around paper pushers for hundreds of $1,000s a day. They make $39 million a year for pushing paper. They are sucking money out of our bills. All of the proposals for Democrats and Republicans simply take middle-class taxes and help poor people pay for insurance to make profit for Blue Cross. There should be no profit in healthcare, and I see it abused all the time, and we are behind other modern nations in not providing healthcare. But in fact, we actually have a very bad healthcare system for all. We don't refuse people from the hospital like we used to. So as a person who believes we should be Christian, I am glad we don't turn away people from hospitals. But it is cheaper to take blood pressure and help someone prevent a kidney failure and a stroke than treat them for a stroke and kidney failure when they show up at the emergency room. It just does not make sense. So what we have is big money donors from big pharma and the healthcare insurance industries literally buying both sides of the aisle. The nuclear energy lobbyists have bought both sides of the aisle. I'm an independent person, but I am running in the Democrat primary because that's where the voters are listening. And so on other issues, how do we balance our budget? I want to tax reality. If you look at the homepage of PeterForIdaho.com, there are 2 expert groups that I am begging people to watch 5 minutes of those videos. Look at Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the Stanford neurosurgeon who apologizes for originally opposing medical marijuana. He explains and shows you the patients that cannabis has blessed and helped epileptic children live a normal life that modern medicines and opiate medicines have nearly killed and didn't help. So going from 300 seizures a month to learning, going from a deathbed to cancer-free, the side effect of cannabis, according to places like Harvard Medical School, is to break cancer cells. So it not only helps with chemotherapy, it actually can prevent cancer from what we know now. We don't want to make promises. There is no safe drug ever, but we need to be taxing this like our neighbors instead of filling our jails at taxpayers' expenses because we are trying to be the nanny state and tell everybody how to live. God gave us all freedom. All of God's gifts can be used or abused, and it's just up as a society to us to jail those who are hurting others. If you drive crazy, drunk, or high, you need to go to jail. There's no doubt. But what you do in your privacy of your own home and according to your religious beliefs and your approach to life is your business. So the other group on the front page of my homepage, PeterForIdaho.com, is LEAP, the top cops and judges across America and across the world, law enforcement against prohibition. And if you watch Police Captain Peter Chris for 5 minutes, you will understand to protect our children and our cops, we need to end all prohibition now. What we saw with the alcohol prohibition was the rise in violence with Al Capone. People need weapons to protect themselves if they're providing liquor. So Al Capone provided liquor to all the senators who, for votes, decided to tell everybody they couldn't drink alcohol. And we turned the country upside down. As soon as they ended prohibition, violence went down. So we have problems with guns and violence in cities, but most of it is caused by the fact that the only law that won't be broken is the law of supply and demand. And people should not go out and use drugs, but the number one cause of this opiate crisis, it doesn't need your money, it needs purity. Prince, it's just revealed, didn't know he was taking his opiates laced with fentanyl, and it is just killing people. The thing about cannabis is nobody has ever died from an overdose of medical marijuana because it doesn't affect the nerves that affect your heart and breathing. So in states where they've legalized medical marijuana, the death rate from overdoses of opiates and pain pills that Big Pharma is reaping millions on has gone down because the pain relief comes without risking your heart. People will still be stupid. People will still abuse drugs, but they shouldn't need to get $200 a day and break into your house to pay for what is a 5-cent product. It is just needs to be taxed, it needs to be regulated, it needs to be controlled. And this is going to balance our budget. So half of the wars that we are fighting with our soldiers, like we just found out we're fighting in Africa, we're fighting drug wars. We're trying to spray chemicals on peasants and give them money. We give countries money to fight drugs, and they just take their money and they take the drug dealers' money, and the supplies keep coming in. And they can come from America, American pharmacies, and they can come from Mexico and all over the world. But the only law that won't be broken is the law of supply and demand. So we need to understand and relax that and tax that and educate our kids. We have kids so ignorant, being taught that pleasure is a sin, that they will die of an alcohol overdose by drinking 21 drinks of alcohol on their 21st birthday just because the numbers match. That is beyond ignorant. I've seen it happen to kids here in Twin Falls. It happens to kids at universities, and that still will probably happen. People are ignorant and stupid. But when you teach pleasure is a sin, and they don't know the difference between a beer and methamphetamine and fentanyl and heroin and all these other drugs that they're being exposed to on a daily basis from grade school up. Police Captain Chris has the point. If we can't keep drugs out of the 47 federal prisons, how are we ever going to keep them out of our society? So we see Mr. Trump claims he's never had a drink because he saw his brother abuse alcohol and die. God bless that. But he sells Trump vodka. It's his right to sell a product that kills and abuses people. It's the person's responsibility to use that correctly. So I even wrote President Trump saying what we need, sir, is Trump heroin, purity. And I even wrote him his first little slogan, Trump heroin as pure as the Aryan nations. And I say that with a smile, but I mean, you have to think about the fact that he is selling Trump vodka right now and making money off of it. And he wants to build a wall. We need wall security, but we mainly need it to control immigration and stop terrorists from walking bombs across the border. There's no doubt we need that controlled. But he's making a whole racist issue about it, like gangs are the only ones that bring in drugs, and his donors with the American pharmaceutical companies. You can see the CBS 60 Minutes special that's on my website, where they stripped the DEA's control of Big Pharma. And so where they have a small town in West Virginia with 3,000 people, and they sell 9 million pain pills out of that pharmacy. DEA used to be able to go in and arrest them and stop that and demand to see their records and all this. And Mike Simpson voted against it, and they called it the Save the Patients bill. It's beyond ridiculous. And so there's issues on all sorts of things. The foreign wars, you must understand it. I'm basically looking at the foreign wars that are unwinnable in terms of, when I first ran for office as a citizen activist, I'm trying to raise the issue. I'm trying to save our water from a ton of plutonium, save our state from meltdowns. And my postman back when I ran for this office as a Republican to stop this, he gave me a book from the NRA and he said, Peter, would you please read this book? I said, I'd love to. I literally was looking for flaws in the book, but I loved the book. It really made a lot of sense. And they talked about how concealed carry made criminals think twice about breaking into places, and gun violence went down when the threat of concealed carry. So I, as much as we want to keep guns out of school, I want to allow teachers who want to conceal carry to have training and permission. We're still going to have problems, but to make sure that schools are not a soft target that is absolutely no teacher will have a gun, and as soon as you shoot the guard, you're home free to hurt kids. But the bottom line is, people who are sick will, if you pulled every gun away, they can still run over 17 kids getting out of school with a car if they are that full of pain. So we have a need for mental health funding, but we see Republicans like Simpson cutting that. But we also have Mike Simpson. I show you his website on PeterForIdaho.com, where they stripped the Obama rule that said if you're getting mental disabilities from Social Security for a mental disability and you need a caretaker for that money, you don't get a gun right away. Now that just makes sense. But there may be some exception to why somebody that disabled needs a gun. And so you can have your doctor sign these forms. And that wasn't good enough for the Republicans. Literally, I don't think they think about what the NRA says. They just said, oh, we don't want bureaucrats filing records on mental patients, so let's never look at that. It's ridiculous. Anybody who has a violent record or a mental disability of any kind can be double-checked. I want everybody to be able to defend themselves, but it's insane what they're doing. I actually am the only first congressional candidate to recommend 30 days in jail for police officers who fail to report, like the last incident in Texas with the church being shot up. The Navy failed to report his mental problems and violent streaks, and he got the guns to use that. The last shooting in Florida here was, again, paperwork being missed. And as boring as it is, doctors also can make mistakes. But when you have threat of 30 days jail if you don't file your paperwork correctly because people's lives depend on it, that's just one of the proposals I have. Nothing will ever be perfect, but I do support the AR-15. If we have the Russians hack our energy supply and food and trucks stop rolling, all sorts of gang violence can occur. We need women on farms to be able to defend themselves. Gang crimes, having biker gangs come. You don't want to limit someone's ability to defend themselves when they're a law-abiding citizen. And I think we've covered a lot of subjects now, but those are the main ones. I'm sure there's actually some more on PeterForIdaho.com.
What should people know about you?
Well, I actually consider myself Idaho's best kept secret. People have seen some very nasty even headlines about me. I don't even want to give them the honor of that. I just have to say they don't know enough about me. Sometimes I think in Idaho they assume if you're advocating any environmental position, you must be some kind of communist plot. In fact, Senator McClure, when I first came here and formed a group with 4 local doctors to oppose the moving of all nuclear weapons here with the SIS plutonium refinery and demanding the cleanup, which they claimed at the time there was nothing to clean up. It was my group that literally turned that around. Even then, Senator McClure said, I was planted by a national environmental group to misinform people. They literally are sticking to that story. And again, Senator McClure is a respected person, and people don't like it when I say his Leave a Legacy Foundation is the legacy of the plutonium he promised to clean up and signed a deal and misinformed people. We had a lawsuit over, it's an infamous lawsuit in Idaho, the All Means All lawsuit. The Department of Energy and the state of Idaho in court battling over what all means, as if it's like Clinton-esque. What does the word is mean? You know, come on, you know what all means. And what is worse is our politicians did not win the All Means All lawsuit. They made a deal that only removed 10% of the buried plutonium. So safe means possible nuclear meltdown from cyber terrorism, and all means 10% clean and 90% dump. They're opening new plutonium dumps on site now, just as I predicted. And we would have had a plutonium incinerator if Jerry Spence, the lawyer from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, didn't step in and do the job our Attorney General said could never be done. Our politicians are paid to lie. And what I don't think people know about me is I've been telling them the truth for 30 years. And that's why I offer a $1,000 reward to any INL scientist, any politician, or any citizen from Idaho. If you find a lie from me, I will give you $1,000. I guarantee I am quoting Department of Energy documents when I say there's containment flaws that can lead to catastrophic failure. We all know what catastrophic failure means, and I'm quoting them correctly. Our DEQ does not share that information, and I do. So what people don't know about me is I've been telling them the truth. What I think they assume is environmentalists exaggerate, and it just straight out, I've been trying to protect my kids when I started in 1988. One boy was 3, one boy was just born. I took him in my arms to the first hearing and said, we don't need more plutonium. We have a ton of plutonium to clean up, and all we've been met with is misinformation. And what I want people to know is I'm looking out for them.
Why should people pick you over other candidates on a Democratic ticket?
Well, my opponent is Aaron Swisher. If you look at Aaron's Facebook page, you'll see a speech he gave to the Bonneville Democrats. I'm going to have a forum there with him May 3rd, but I was amazed when he said, we need coal and fossil fuels in our energy portfolio now, and all future generations will need coal and fossil fuels in their portfolio. So I really think Aaron doesn't know enough to be congressman. That's an ignorant statement. If you're pro-nuclear, you think nuclear can replace coal. And I have asked him if he's pro-nuclear or not. I just can't believe he's getting promoted by the pro-nuclear people, and he's not pro-nuclear, which means he still doesn't know they're trying to replace coal as well. But absolutely, I'm quoting correctly, that we can triple our energy needs with geothermal, wind, and solar alone. And if we'd have spent the $7 trillion that we have spent fighting oil wars in the Mideast and built our own windmills, we would now be energy independent, and we would not be polluting the air with mercury, which coal does. So there's other things that Aaron has said that, like I don't hear a health care plan from him. My health care plan is Medicare for all, but I want to include the private practice option, because if you look at the VA, it's a backlog, it's a nightmare. They are killing our veterans by making them wait for treatment. That's why we don't have national health care now. People are wisely afraid, like President Bush said, it will be as compassionate as the IRS and as efficient as the post office. Well, I know good people in both those places. You know what Mr. Bush meant, or President Bush meant then. And so what I want to use is vouchers so that we can keep private practice options. So if you paid, let's say, $1,000 for back procedures, you can take that voucher to the doctor of your choice. If he says, I want that voucher plus $1,000 more, that's your privilege to pay him if he's worth it. He might give you a massage in your chair while you wait, or have his aides do that for your Cadillac care. But basically, when you get cancer, you want your kids treated. You don't want 80% treated. We don't need millionaires making more money than people do in a year in one day by being head of Blue Cross. So I may have lost track on that, but the healthcare for all, basically I want to double the number of doctors we have, because like when my mom moved to Boise, she couldn't get a doctor, and some that were taking patients, well, not if you just have Medicare. And supply and demand, again, we work with it as opposed to against it. We double the number of doctors so that they actually are going to be looking for patients. We could do that fairly cheaply right now in the present buildings we use for medical schools run a night school. We're turning away 4.0 students from medical schools, and doctors are so snotty they're not treating patients. So let's double them up. Let's pay their tuition so they don't come out angry and $300,000 or $500,000 in debt. We pay their tuition. In return, they give us 10 years of salary, $200,000 a year, nice salary service as a doctor. After 10 years in the free clinics, they can go into private practice if they want or stay. But it gives doctors options, it gives patients options, it prevents this one thing kind of monopoly that we see at the VA, and that's my proposal. What Aaron said on the Bonneville speech was we need to go to one payer eventually, and there's no plan. So I can detail the energy policies, I can detail the foreign policies, and I might have missed track on the NRA book. The key part of the NRA book was they said an armed population can never be taken over by a fascist government, and they pointed to Osama bin Laden defending Afghanistan from the Russians who were trying to kill them and take over Afghanistan for 10 years. So part of my foreign policy is based on the NRA logic that you can't tell the people in the Middle East how to live their lives. And if the UN came in to America and tried to enforce our first our first Indian treaty, which we signed, our government signed, everything west of the Mississippi's the Indians, if they enforced that, we would kill the UN soldiers. We would be the terrorists. We can't tolerate foreigners telling us what to do. And Arabs will never listen to what fat white politicians like Mike Simpson and Mr. Trump tell them to do. We see Mr. Trump, who dodged the draft, put a chip on our soldiers' shoulder by moving the embassy to Jerusalem. This is intentionally setting off protests in the Arab world. Why is he so arrogantly telling people who their leaders are in this world? We kill leaders we don't want. We tell people who to elect and who to run their country, and then those people end up fighting us as well. It's like, it's hard enough to run our country, but we can't tell others how to do it. I'm glad we killed bin Laden, but truthfully, if we had not been killing the leaders, the CIA assassinated the leaders and installed the Shah of Iran. Dr. Ron Paul understood that foreign policy as well. And when you kill people and tell them what to do, they fight back just like we would fight back. And so I don't think we should be putting our soldiers in harm's way anymore. I think we have done great things, but our enemies, our friends become our enemies there, and we're trillions of dollars in debt, and we're paying more there, and it's never going to end. So there's more on my website, but whether it's healthcare, nuclear power, how to make ourselves energy independent, how to bring domestic peace by ending the drug wars, I think I'm much more prepared than Aaron is. And I think Mr. Simpson needs to go. So I hope the people of Idaho will visit PeterForIdaho.com and give me a chance to help protect the kids of Idaho who do not know what their fathers do.